And Donald Trump went on live TV and 7 times, Adam, 7 times, he said that MS-13 was written on his knuckles, because this was the digitally photoshopped image that Trump was given by his aides and that they put out to right-wing media. It's a photoshopped image. Trump 7 times claimed to the audience that those numbers were really there on his hands. Is he mentally competent? We talked about Joe Biden's competence. Is Donald Trump mentally competent? Recently, he told Time magazine, Adam, that he won at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against Trump.
I love to sit down and watch Trump's bootlicking sycophants get dismantled on live telly. And we've got a cracking one here from a few months ago. But before we get into it, I'd love to give a big shout out to Dan from Queensland, Australia, Brian Farrelly from Canada, John Pelosi from North Carolina, James from New Zealand, Wendy from the UK, Kenneth Burridge from Aarhus, and Terry from the south of England. It's people like you who make what we do here possible. Right then, Mehdi Hasan versus Carla Sands. Now, if you don't know Mehdi, and honestly, where have you been if you don't, this man built his entire reputation on not letting politicians get away with their nonsense. He's the founder of Zeteo, former MSNBC host, and currently a visiting fellow at Georgetown University. The man does his homework. And Carla Sands? Former ambassador to Denmark under Trump, now chairing some America First foreign policy initiative. So we've got a proper clash here. This debate happened during Trump's first 100 days back in office. The supposed golden age we were promised. And look, I haven't watched this yet, but I already know how this goes. Because I've seen Mehdi work before. The man asks questions that make people squirm, and he doesn't let them pivot into their talking points without dragging them back to the actual question. What makes this particularly juicy is we're talking about examining Trump's actual record versus the mythology they've constructed around it. The economic claims, the military posturing, all of it. Are we living in prosperity, or are we living in propaganda? That's what I want to find out. I'm genuinely excited to react to this one with you lot. Because these confrontations between fact-based journalism and spin are getting rarer by the day. So let's see what happens when someone actually pushes back. If you love watching me unravel disasters like this, please click that subscribe button. And while you're at it, if you'd like to get a shout out in my next video, then like the video, share it with a friend, and tell me your name and where you're watching from.
Carla Sands was President Trump's ambassador to Denmark during his first administration, and Mehdi Hasan is a British-American broadcaster and editor-in-chief of new media company Zeteo. Thanks for joining us both.
Happy to be here, Adam.
Happy to see you. Carla, what would be your signature achievement you're looking for in the next 100 days?
Right. Well, certainly it's promises made, promises kept. I'm enjoying the 101st day of the golden age of America. And what I hope to see President Trump do is he's right now in the White House surrounded by some of the top CEOs in the world, and they're talking about the investments that they're bringing to the United States, creating jobs. President Trump has already brought over 300,000 new jobs.
Carla, President Trump has already brought a first quarter of negative economic growth, we learned today.
President Biden was losing 6,000 jobs a month. President Trump has already added 9,000 new manufacturing jobs.
Mehdi?
Yeah, I don't know what the golden age of America looks like, but it surely doesn't look like a 101st day in which we have a negative quarter of growth for the first time since the start of 2022. Let's not forget, at the end of 2024, Donald Trump inherited an economy where the final quarter of growth was 2.4% annualized. Today, we discover the first quarter of 2025 is minus 0.3%. A majority of Americans, including 51% of Republicans, say they believe Donald Trump's policies could cause a recession this year. So not sure people voted for a recession or for more inflation from tariffs or for the decimation of their 401ks, the worst stock market 100-day performance since Richard Nixon. He has kind of taken an economy which that left-wing rag, The Economist magazine, called the envy of the world, and he's trashing it. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure it's ideology, whether it's grievance. He's obsessed with these tariffs, even though every serious economist in the United States and across the world is telling him stop. Some of his own advisors are trying to tell him to stop, but he's not listening. So if this is what the golden age looks like, God help us when we enter the dark ages of the Trump era.
Carla, you can't argue with the numbers, GDP figures today.
Well, I can. Actually, I can argue with the numbers. So he inherited Joe Biden's numbers. It was an inflated economy from pumping taxpayer money. This was government spending, propping up the U.S. economy and creating unsustainable debt. The trillions of dollars of debt President Trump has promised to bring us a
Donald
balanced
Trump added
budget.
more to the
He's
debt in his
actually-
first term than Joe Biden did in his term. Actually,
He had
just a factual point
COVID
of view.
hit, so that's a tilt. That's
So
not
did Joe
fair.
Biden.
COVID hit President Trump's best economy
He
in
added
the
to the
history
debt
of our
prior
country
to
in
COVID
2019.
with his tax
Now he's
cuts for
bringing that
millionaires.
economy back. You're speaking over me. I didn't do that to you. It's not really so polite.
Yeah, let's be polite on the 101st day.
Absolutely.
Carla, I mean, okay,
Donald
let's
Trump.
say there's another quarter of negative economic growth and we speak in 3 months' time. Is that okay? Is that a price worth paying for what Donald Trump wants to do to the economy?
So what President Trump is doing is, and let's just remind all your viewers, the press in the US covers President Trump 96% negative. It's a miracle he has any positive rating in the polls. But in the UK and EU, it's even more negative. So I'm sorry that your media brainwashes you, but the fact is President Trump is doing the hard work of righting the American economy, reindustrializing our nation. We were slipping into a service economy, and you cannot be a great power if you don't make things. You have to manufacture things. You have to make steel and aluminum. You have to be able to make your own ships, and you have to have your own rare earth minerals and prescription precursors.
Okay, let me ask Mehdi if he's been, Carla, let me ask Mehdi if he's been doing any brainwashing lately.
Well, first of all, the
I assure
manufacturing
you.
boom has been, the manufacturing boom was happening on Biden's watch, as all the numbers showed. But in terms of, it's funny to talk about brainwashing when the entire MAGA message is Donald Trump and Fox brainwashing people into believing insane things like the last election was stolen. Last night on American television, on ABC News, Donald Trump tried to claim that a photoshopped image of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man from Maryland, the El Salvadoran who had caught in the US, said could not be sent back to El Salvador. But he defied the court, the Trump administration, sent him illegally back to a torture camp in El Salvador.
Oh, this is already beautiful. Did you catch that? Carla Sands just sat there and said, promises made, promises kept, while Mehdi calmly reads out the actual GDP numbers showing negative growth. And she just plows right through it. Here's the thing about Carla Sands that you need to understand. This woman was ambassador to Denmark under Trump and spent her tenure reportedly pushing this whole Greenland acquisition nonsense. She's been banging on about how Denmark supposedly can't defend Greenland from Russian and Chinese influence. That's her whole thing now at the America First Policy Institute. So when she talks about economic achievements, she's not operating in reality, she's operating in MAGA fantasy land where buying Greenland is serious foreign policy. And Mehdi, look at him just sitting there with actual data. The economy Trump inherited had 2.4% growth. First quarter under Trump? Minus 0.3%. That's not spin, that's not media brainwashing. That's the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's the government's own numbers. But what kills me, what absolutely kills me, is when Sands tries to blame Biden for the numbers Trump inherited, but also credit Trump for job creation that happened under those same conditions. Pick a lane. You can't have it both ways. And then she pivots to, well, the media covers Trump 96% negative, as if that's an argument. Maybe, just maybe, the coverage is negative because the policies are producing negative outcomes. Wild thought, I know. Mehdi doesn't even need to raise his voice. He just states facts and watches her spin herself in circles. This is what accountability looks like when someone actually bothers to do it.
And Donald Trump went on live TV and 7 times, Adam, 7 times, he said that MS-13 was written on his knuckles because this was the digitally photoshopped image that Trump was given by his aides and that they put out to right-wing media. It's a photoshopped image. Trump 7 times claimed to the audience that those numbers were really there on his hands. That is the level of delusion and gaslighting and dishonesty in this White House. I mean, every president lies. George Bush lied, Joe Biden lied, or Barack Obama lied. But no one lies like Trump. To take an image that's fake, that's photoshopped, that's demonstrably untrue, and repeat 7 times on national television. No, he had the letters MS-13. Is he mentally competent? We talked about Joe Biden's competence. Is Donald Trump mentally competent? Recently, he told Time magazine, Adam, that he won at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against Trump and said you must facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They are violating the Supreme Court. They are violating lower courts. That is what they're doing in this 100 days.
Okay, Carla, is your man relying on a doctored image and falling for fake news with that picture?
Adam, I don't want to waste the time of your viewers talking about an inconsequential known gang member. I want to talk about how President Trump has brought $5 trillion of new investment into the United States, how we're making America healthy again by taking the dyes out of the food and finding actually the cause of autism, a heartbreak for so many American families. They're losing their children. And also making America safer, taking the DOD, which was going woke and very like an indoctrination center, and creating again that lethal fighting force focused on the mission.
What was happening at the DOD's Department of Defense? What was happening in the military caused by woke, as you put it, that was so bad, Carla?
Yeah, so the U.S., the DOD under the radical leftists controlling Joe Biden, who your media never talked about as mental incompetence, and everyone saw it even in 2019.
Mental incompetence, you won't even defend.
Mehdi, let Carla finish and I'll come back to you.
If I may. So we saw the Pentagon refocus on the security of the United States instead of doing things like censoring Americans. How about what USAID was doing, destabilizing the world and funding terrorism from U.S. taxpayer dollars? It's unconscionable.
Okay, let's let Mehdi respond to some of the things that you were saying there.
Sure.
Yeah, you said a lot there. I mean, look, what she said about USAID is false. Elon Musk and Doge are super unpopular, have failed. They're being thrown out. She talks about she says she doesn't want to talk about inconsequential gang members. The president, 7 times as the journalist tried to move on, insisted that the journalist concede that words were written on a hand that were not written. That's mental incompetence. He's deluded.
Right, and now we're into the military stuff. And hold on. Did she just say the Pentagon was going woke? That's her answer. The most powerful military apparatus in human history, and her critique is that it was too woke. This is the deflection playbook, and Mehdi sees right through it. Because here's what woke military actually means in MAGA speak. It means they have no substantive criticism of actual defense readiness or strategic capability, so they invent a culture war boogeyman. What was the Pentagon actually doing wrong, Carla? She can't say, because there's nothing concrete there. But forget the woke nonsense for a second, because the photoshopped image thing, that's where this gets genuinely disturbing. Trump went on television 7 times, insisting MS-13 was tattooed on a gang member's knuckles. 7 times. And it was doctored. His own aides gave him a fake image, and he repeated the lie 7 times on national television. And when Mehdi brings this up, what does Sands do? She calls it inconsequential. A president spreading fabricated imagery to justify his policies is inconsequential. The leader of the free world can't distinguish between real evidence and Photoshop, and that's not worth discussing. This is why Mehdi is so effective here. He's not letting her escape into talking points about investment figures and food dyes. He's pinning her down on the fundamental question. Is the man mentally competent enough to recognize reality? Because if you can't tell a real photo from a fake one after being told it's fake, that's not a policy disagreement. That's a cognitive crisis.
Well, it could just be a mistake, Mehdi. That's not a sign of like a mental fitness.
Hold on, Adam. He held up a photo that was doctored. That was bad enough a week ago. We were told, oh, he didn't mean it literally. And last night he told us he literally believes 7 times that this guy has MS-13 written on his knuckles, a guy who shouldn't even been in El Salvador, and he's defying a Supreme Court ruling that Carla doesn't want to mention. As for making America safe, Donald Trump pardoned 1,300 rioters on his first day in office. His own Vice President, J.D. Vance, his own Attorney General, Pam Bondi, said he wouldn't do it. He did it. He pardoned 300 people who attacked police officers. Can Carla defend that, or does she want to move on from that? How do you defend pardoning 300 people who assaulted police officers, more than 100 police officers? He pardoned them. How are you okay with that?
We're talking about the noise and not what actually matters. Okay. The fact that this El Salvadoran citizen had already had a removal order. He had had his day in court. He had had his hearings. He had come in twice. The Supreme Court says illegally.
9-0. He must be brought back. 9-0.
So I don't think that the Supreme Court of the United States actually makes American foreign policy. That comes from the executive. And so sometimes
it's not a foreign policy decision, it's a due process decision.
But at the same time, we need to see that our country is run in a constitutional way, and we have separation of powers, thankfully. But what I want to focus on is the great things that President Trump and his incredible administration are doing, bringing down the cost of gas.
Does that include pardoning rioters? You haven't answered, Carla. Do you support pardoning rioters who attack police officers?
Again, you're speaking over me.
You didn't answer my question.
Even want the viewers to hear the good news.
I'm just going to pause you both there, just in the interest of people making sense of what's going on. Last few words from each of you. Do you think Donald Trump will be celebrating peace between Russia and Ukraine, brokered by him, in the next 100 days? Carla, yes or no?
Wow. That would be an amazing thing. And we should all pray for peace between Ukraine and Russia. I really hope it's successful. He said it would be harder, that the Israel-Hamas war would be easier to solve than the Russia-Ukraine war. I'm hoping that between Putin and Zelensky and these peacemakers that are coming together, that it will be successful so that the killing ends. That would be the most wonderful 200-day celebration. So I hope that you're right, Adam.
Mehdi, any chance?
Adam, I'm glad you asked that question. Trump said multiple times he would solve the war in 24 hours before he entered office. We're now 240 hours in. We're 100 days into this thing, and 2,400. Sorry, I can't even do maths.
Yeah.
2,400 hours later, and he hasn't done it, right? Because he lies.
Mehdi, you have me questioning your mental fitness after that.
I know, my mental fitness, but I conceded I was wrong, and Trump's never done that. 2,400 hours later, he has not solved the Ukraine conflict. He's actually been tougher on Canada and Denmark, our NATO allies, than on Vladimir Putin.
Thank you very much, both of you.
So that's where we land then, 9-0. The Supreme Court rules 9-0 that this man must be brought back to the United States, and Carla Sands sits there with a straight face and says, the Supreme Court doesn't always get it right. I need you to understand what just happened there. A unanimous ruling. Every single justice, including the ones Trump appointed himself. And her response is to shrug it off because the executive branch makes foreign policy. That's not how any of this works. That's not how constitutional law works. That's not how America works. And Mehdi he doesn't let her breathe. He asks her point blank, can you defend pardoning 300 people who assaulted police officers? 300. More than 100 officers injured, beaten, sprayed, crushed in doorways. And Trump pardoned them on day one. His own vice president said he wouldn't do it. Pam Bondi said he wouldn't do it. He did it anyway. What does Carla say? She says Mehdi is talking about noise instead of what actually matters. Noise. Police officers getting their skulls cracked open is noise to her. The violent overthrow of democratic process is noise. But gas prices dropping 17%, that's the real story apparently. This is the thing that breaks my brain every single time. The party that supposedly backs the blue. The party that wraps itself in law and order rhetoric. They cannot bring themselves to condemn violence against officers when it comes from their own side. 300 pardons for people who beat cops, and Carla Sands wants to talk about energy dominance. And then we get to Ukraine. Adam asks a simple yes or no question. Will Trump broker peace in the next 100 days? And watch Carla's face. Watch her dodge. We should all pray for peace. That's not an answer. That's a politician running from their own candidate's promises. Because here's what Trump actually said. He said he would solve the war in 24 hours, before he even took office. Mehdi does the maths right there on air. 2,400 hours later, and nothing. Not a ceasefire, not a framework, nothing but Zelensky getting berated and our NATO allies getting threatened. Trump has been tougher on Canada and Denmark than on Vladimir Putin. Let that sink in. Our closest allies. Countries that have stood with us through every conflict for generations. And he's treating them worse than the man who invaded a sovereign nation and committed documented war crimes. This entire debate captures everything wrong with the current political discourse. You have Mehdi Hasan coming with receipts, Bureau of Economic Analysis data, Supreme Court rulings, direct quotes, documented pardons. And you have Carla Sands responding with vibes and talking points and culture war grievances about woke militaries. And the moderator has to physically pause them both, because Sands keeps talking over the actual facts. She knows if viewers hear the full picture, they'll see through the performance. So her strategy is volume. Her strategy is interruption. Her strategy is to keep the conversation moving fast enough that nobody has time to process the contradictions. This is what accountability looks like when someone actually does it properly. Mehdi doesn't let her pivot. He doesn't let her change the subject. He asks a direct question, and when she doesn't answer, he asks it again. Can you defend the pardons, Carla? Yes or no? She never answers. And that tells you everything you need to know. Look, I've watched a lot of these debates over the years. A lot of talking heads shouting past each other. But what makes this one different is the asymmetry. One side has facts and the other side has feelings. One side has data and the other side has denial. And when you strip away all the performance, what you're left with is a very simple question. Do we want leaders who can be held accountable to reality, or do we want leaders who treat Supreme Court rulings as suggestions and police beatings as noise? That's the choice. That's always been the choice. So here's my ask. Don't just watch these things passively. Engage with them. Question them. When someone makes a claim, go look up the actual data. When someone says the economy is booming, check the GDP numbers yourself. When someone says a ruling doesn't matter, read the actual decision. The people who benefit from your confusion are counting on you to stay confused. They're counting on the chaos. They're counting on you giving up and tuning out. Don't give them that satisfaction. Subscribe to the channel and drop your name and where you're watching from in the comments so I can give you a shout out in the next video. And if you want to support what we do here, click that join button below to become a channel member. Speaking of dismantling major talking points, there's this Gen Z creator who absolutely demolished a Trump defender with one single argument. One. And the way she did it was honestly better than anything I could have managed. I'll link that one right here. Trust me, you want to see it.